Hello, Tony. Welcome to the Bay.
Thank you.
Now, you've coached college. You haven't played, coached, or managed in the big leagues. 56 games versus 162 plus spring training and whatever happens in October. But Buster and Tony, have you talked about how different this will be in terms, we've seen how emotional and passionate you are at the college level. Can you transfer that to this 162 game grind, or will you have to tone it down a little bit? What's the conversation between you two on that front?
I think if you ask my mom, she'd want me to tone it down, but if you ask my dad, he'd say kick it up a notch, you know? I think it is completely different. There's obviously, we didn't waste any time. We got to the first question that everybody was maybe thinking and should ask, and it is very different. So I think the one thing about each game unto itself, whether it's high school, college, or pro, is it's kind of got its own personality, its own flavor. And you have to adapt to that particular day, especially in our sport. I mean, the one common theme that I always, when I first started coaching that I didn't like is when you win, you lose, 9-6, it's the pitching let us down. And then when you lose 3-2, it's, pitchers did their job, but the hitters didn't hit. You win and lose as a team, and every game, for whatever reason, kind of has its own vibe to it. And I feel every day is like that too. And whether it's 162, 56, or whatever, baseball is a sport that is built on sample size, and you have to be willing to separate each one as a mutually exclusive one and attack it for what it is at that particular time. So I wish I had an answer in my own head, to be honest with you, because as I first got here, I was like, man, there are a lot of unknowns and just a lot of wonder in my mind. And of course, you can ask people and draw on previous information, but until you live it out, you don't know what it's going to be like.
Sorry, Matt. John Shea, San Francisco Standard. Sorry about that. And just one more. Buster, when Gabe Kapler was here, it seems like there was a massive collaboration on how the in-game game planning and strategizing was going to come down, whether it's the bullpen moves or the lineups or anything like that. Maybe not so much with Bob Melvin. What's it going to be like now? How much will the front office be involved in the analytics department and scouting and everything else with the game-to-game, with the day-to-day planning, including in-game strategizing?
I think it remains to be seen. And some of it will just evolve naturally as we spend more time around each other and the staff is built out. The way I look at our role is we're evaluating so many different departments across the organization. But as much as anything, the way I see us is a support system to get Tony and his staff information. We can be a sounding board. We can be think partners as well. As Tony mentioned, from my experience, any great team that I've been a part of, people are pulling in the same direction, and that's the hope and the expectation here is, we're all going to be working together. Does that mean that we're going to have perfect harmony all the time? No, I mean, it doesn't. But there's going to be things that we all continue to learn and grow together as we go through this.
Over here on the right, Mark.
Hey, Tony. Mark Willard, 95.7 The Game. Just kind of building on your previous answer, kind of person to person, I wonder if you have any concerns with the idea of kind of the energy that you would use for a college player. Like, does that work for someone who might be in their 30s and has, kids at home? Like, do you have to, from that level, kind of adjust your style, or how will you go about kind of addressing that?
Yeah, I think one thing we did well at the places I've been, in particular Tennessee, was coach guys as individuals. I've always used the example in recruiting. You turn on a TV and watch a big league game, whether it's last night or you're watching the Giants play the Padres, you're going to see 9 different stances, 4 or 5 different deliveries and things like that. So it's not an exact parallel, but just kind of use an example of it's got to be individualistic. I mean, some of these guys are, guys that I've recruited, and, I don't know what the punishment running is, but Bryce said no to Tennessee when I was there. So we'll have a separate conversation. But no, he's a great kid, but to be honest with you, he's exactly what I just got done doing a week ago. and then you climb the ladder and you get to a guy like Justin Verlander or a Max Scherzer or somebody like that. I think those conversations are completely different. So it's an easy answer to say it's individualistic because it's kind of vague, but that's truly what it is. And then falling back on my other answer, I do think you got to come to the office and vibe it out. I think some of those conversations are a lot easier when things are going good, and when they're not, Buster just kind of got done commenting on, we'll all work together. The whole goal is to create a bond here between everybody at the top all the way down to whatever you consider the bottom of the depth chart, and all have a bond strong enough that when Alex Gordon hits a triple, everybody's still on the same page and willing to get through that moment and come out victorious. I was at that game, by the way, behind home plate. It was rather intense. Correct?
Yeah, I'll second that. It was.
Let's go right here to the right.
Hi, Tony. Justice De Los Santos, San Jose Mercury News. Question for Buster as well as Zach. When did the idea of first considering Tony come to mind? And following that first consideration, how did the process of wanting to interview him and get to know him more, how did that process evolve? And kind of for Zach as well, like what were your first maybe impressions?
Yeah, well, I'll start because I'll give Zach credit. He was the one who first had the thought. I think that's credit, right? Yeah. But no, it's so I don't remember the exact time, but once the season was over, started having conversations, pretty casual to start with. A unique thing about this process was, and it's one thing that I've come to really appreciate about Tony, and honestly made me feel more confident in this decision, is this guy he was hard to get a hold of because he was on the field all the time, or he was bouncing from city to city recruiting. And just because this was on his plate, he was still full go with what his job was at Tennessee. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. I wish it was easier to get in contact with you during those times sometimes. But it's, so yeah, that's a little bit of how it played out. Zach, you feel free to add on to that.
Yeah, I would just say, as much as this feels out of the box, Tony's name has been bouncing around Major League Baseball for a while. Fortunate to sit in the draft room, and Tennessee's program has been top notch, which means there's a lot of good players that we're talking about year in and year out. I've been fortunate to go watch them, and I think just the nature of this job is you're always evaluating everything. Not necessarily sitting here 3 years ago watching Tennessee play and Gilbert in center field and Dolander pitching saying, one day we're going to hire Tony as a manager, but you get a sense of how he goes about it, his passion, his intellect, his care. I mean, he talks a lot about family, and those are things that we talk about. But I think starting the process, you really want to try and build as big a list as you can. There's a lot of talented people out there. And as we started to go through it, I felt like we kept coming back to this one would be really interesting, and it just got even more and more interesting as we continued to speak.
Let's go, Brian.
Hi, Tony. Brian Murphy from KMBR. We're the Giants flagship. We carry all the stations. Welcome to San Francisco.
Thank you.
So baseball, this is the hard question. Baseball's a dues-paying culture. They say if you didn't ride the bus in the minors, you can't get to the show. So you haven't. So I'm wondering, have you reached out to those veterans, the Willie Adameses, the Matt Chapmans, the Rafi Devers, to suss them out and earn their credibility or respect?
More just touching base, and pretty cool that some of those guys beat me to the punch and reached out to me first, but just some casual going back and forth. And I think we all want the same thing. It's to win. And, that's where the conversations have started to this point. I think it's, normally it's recruiting in college. You're going to see people face to face. I think it's good that there's some time between now and spring training for me to maybe go out, and wouldn't be able to do it with the whole roster, but do spend some time face to face with those guys, and earn their trust or their respect in a different way. Because I can't go back in time and be a switch hitter or be a catcher or anything like that. So, but I am very sensitive, with all due respect, to the phrase "pay your dues," because like the other coaches in our league and across the country, Yesavich is, Cliff Godwin is the coach at East Carolina. He reached out last night because Max and Yesavich are embracing. It's a lot of lonely nights in a hotel, and it's a lot of phone calls and it's a lot of text messages. It's hearing no just as much as maybe an insurance salesman or whoever else, or maybe a reporter looking for an interview that hears a no. So dues have come in a different way, and hopefully respect will be earned, in different ways. And the only way I know how to do that is through hard work.